She was thrown out by her husband at the Christmas party. Then a cold CEO asked, "May I have this dance?" Before we step into the glittering lights and the dark shadows of this Christmas story, take a moment to subscribe and let us know in the comments, what is the best Christmas gift you've ever received? And stay tuned until the very end to rate this story from 0 to 10. Now, let's begin. The mirror in the small, cramped bathroom of the apartment in Queens was cracked in the bottom corner, a spider web of glass that distorted the reflection of the woman standing in front of it. Maya stared at herself, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the neckline of her dress. It was a deep crimson velvet dress. To an untrained eye, it might have looked festive, perhaps even elegant in a vintage sort of way. But Maya knew the truth stitched into every seam. She had made it herself 3 years ago, using fabric she bought on clearance at a fabric store in the garment district. She had spent nights hunched over her grandmother's old Singer sewing machine, carefully hemming the skirt, praying the thread wouldn't snap. Tonight was the annual Christmas gala for Sterling and Hearth, the investment firm where her husband, Liam, had recently been promoted to senior analyst. It wasn't just a party. Liam had made it very clear that it was a battlefield. It was a place where alliances were forged over champagne and careers were destroyed by a single fashion faux pas. "Please," Maya whispered to her reflection, smoothing the fabric over her hips, "just let me blend in. Don't let me be a burden." She wasn't a woman who craved the spotlight. Maya was a librarian, a woman who found comfort in the smell of old paper and the quiet dust of the archives. She preferred cardigans to couture and silence to small talk. But for Liam, she would try. She loved him, or at least she loved the memory of who he used to be, the ambitious but sweet man who used to buy her roasted nuts from street vendors in December. That man seemed to have vanished the moment he got his corner office. "Maya, we're leaving in 5 minutes. If you're not ready, I'm leaving you behind." Liam's voice boomed from the living room, sharp and impatient. It wasn't a loving call. It was a threat. Maya flinched. She quickly pinned a stray lock of her dark hair behind her ear, applied a coat of red lipstick that she had bought from a drugstore, a shade she hoped looked expensive, and took a deep breath. She grabbed her coat, a simple wool trench that had seen better days, and stepped out into the living room. Liam was standing by the door, checking his watch. He looked undeniably handsome. His tuxedo was midnight blue, tailored to perfection, hugging his broad shoulders. His hair was gelled back, sleek and professional. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. He looked up as Maya entered. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He didn't smile. He didn't say, "You look beautiful." He didn't even nod. He just stared. His eyes traveled from her sensible black heels up to the hem of the homemade velvet dress, lingering on the slightly uneven stitching at the waist, and finally resting on her face with an expression of pure, unadulterated disappointment. "You're wearing that?" Liam asked. His voice was quiet, but it cut deeper than a scream. Maya instantly wrapped her arms around herself, trying to cover the dress. I thought it was festive. It's Christmas, Liam. Red is fine, Maya." Liam interrupted, walking towards her, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. "But that red? That fabric? It looks like you cut up a theater curtain. It looks cheap." He stopped 2 feet away from her, invading her personal space, not with affection, but with judgment. He reached out and fingered the velvet of her sleeve, his face twisting in a sneer. "I told you to buy something new. I gave you my credit card," he hissed. I know, Liam," she stammered, her heart racing, But the prices, Liam? $1,000 for a dress? We're saving for a house. I couldn't justify spending that much for one night. I thought this looked classic. Liam let go of her sleeve as if it were contaminated. He let out a harsh, bitter laugh. A house. You think $1,000 matters when I'm trying to make partner? Maya, tonight isn't about saving pennies. It's about projecting power. It's about showing the board that I belong in their world. And you look like you belong in a soup kitchen. Tears pricked Maya's eyes. She fought them back. She knew Liam hated tears. He called them emotional blackmail. I can change, she whispered, her voice trembling. I have the black dress from your sister's wedding. No time, Liam snapped, checking his watch again. The CEO, Elias Thorne, is giving the opening toast at 8 p.m. sharp. If we walk in late, we might as well not walk in at all. Thorne is a tyrant. He fires people for being 30 seconds late. He turned to the door, grabbing his cashmere scarf. Just keep your coat on for as long as possible, and try to stay in the shadows. Do not, I repeat, do not approach Elias Thorne or any of the senior partners. You smile, you nod, and you don't speak unless spoken to. Do you understand? I understand, Maya said softly, feeling small. Good. Now let's go. And for God's sakes, wipe that lipstick off. It's on your teeth. The car ride. The ride to the venue was a study in suffocating silence. Liam drove his leased BMW with aggressive precision, weaving through the snowy streets of Manhattan. The city was dressed for the holidays. Massive wreaths hung from lampposts, and shop windows glowed with fairy lights. It should have been magical. Inside the car, the tension was thick enough to choke on. The heater was blasting, but Maya felt frozen. She sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, staring out the window at the blurred lights. She tried to remember the last time Liam had held her hand in the car. It had been years. So, Liam broke the silence, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. I need you to be aware of the stakes tonight. I know it's important, she said quietly. Important doesn't begin to cover it, he corrected her sharply. Rumor has it that Thorne is looking for a new vice president of operations. The shortlist is me and Brad from the derivatives desk. Brad's wife is a former model who runs a charity foundation. She looks the part. She charms people. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air like toxic smoke. I need you to not be a liability, Maya. Is that too much to ask? Just exist quietly. Don't tell anyone you're a librarian. Tell them you're in information sciences if they ask. It sounds better. Maya turned her head to look at him. You're ashamed of me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Liam sighed, a sound of immense fatigue. I am realistic, Maya. We live in a world of wolves. Elias Thorne didn't build a multi-billion-dollar empire by being nice. He's known as the Ice King for a reason. He judges everything. He judges the cut of your suit, the firmness of your handshake, and yes, he judges the woman standing next to you. If he thinks I have low standards in my personal life, he'll assume I have low standards in my work. I love you, Maya said, a desperate attempt to bridge the gap. Doesn't that count as a high standard? Liam didn't answer. He just turned up the radio, drowning out her words with the sound of a generic Christmas pop song. Arrival at the Obsidian Tower. The venue for the Sterling and Hearth Christmas Gala was the Obsidian Tower, a monolithic skyscraper of black glass and steel that pierced the Manhattan skyline. It was the headquarters of Elias Thorne's empire. As they pulled up to the valet stand, the scale of the wealth was overwhelming. A line of limousines and high-end sports cars stretched down the block.
Women in floor-length gowns of silk and diamonds stepped out into the snowy night, shielded by umbrellas held by uniformed doormen. Men in tuxedos laughed with the easy confidence of people who owned the world. Maya looked down at her homemade velvet dress. Suddenly, the fabric felt itchy. The hem felt crooked. She felt like a child who had dressed up in her mother's clothes. "Here we go," Maya muttered, putting the car in park. He turned to her, his expression hard. "Coat on, shoulders back. And Maya?" "Yes?" "Don't embarrass me." He stepped out of the car and walked around to the valet, tossing his keys with a practiced nonchalance. He didn't open the door for her. Maya had to open her own door, struggling slightly against the heavy wind that whipped snow into her face. She hurried to catch up with Liam, who was already striding toward the massive revolving gold doors. "Wait!" she gasped, her heels slipping slightly on an ice patch.
Liam didn't slow down. He marched into the lobby, and Maya was forced to run a few steps to avoid being left outside. The lobby of the Obsidian Tower was a cathedral of capitalism. The ceiling soared 50 feet high, dominated by a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of crystals. In the center of the room stood a 20-foot Christmas tree, decorated not with tinsel, but with ornaments made of blown glass and silver. The air smelled of pine, expensive perfume, and money. Maya felt the eyes of the other guests sliding over her. She pulled her wool coat tighter around her body, trying to make herself invisible. She saw a group of women near the elevators, tall, blonde, wearing gowns that sparkled like liquid metal. They looked at Maya, whispered something to each other, and giggled. Maya looked at the floor. She wished the marble would open up and swallow her whole. "Coat check is to the left," Liam commanded, steering her by the elbow. His grip was tight, bordering on painful. Can I keep it on?" Maya asked, her voice small. "I'm cold." "It's 70 degrees in here, Maya. You can't wear a ratty trench coat into the grand ballroom. Give it to the attendant, now." Maya obeyed. She slowly unbuttoned the coat. As she slid it off her shoulders, revealing the red velvet dress, she felt exposed. She waited for Liam to say something, anything, kind. He just grimaced, "Stand up straight, and pull the neckline up. You look desperate." He grabbed her arm again and pulled her toward the golden elevators that would take them up to the penthouse ballroom. As the doors closed, trapping them with their reflections in the mirrored walls, Maya caught a glimpse of herself. She didn't see a woman excited for a party. She saw a woman walking to her own execution. Upstairs, the doors opened. The noise of the party hit them like a physical wave. Jazz music, clinking glasses, and the roar of hundreds of conversations. And somewhere in that crowd was Elias Thorne, the cold CEO, the man Liam feared, the man who held their future in his hands. Maya took a shaky breath. She didn't know it yet, but this was the night her life would break into pieces. And it was also the night she would find out what she was truly made of. The grand ballroom. The elevator doors slid open, and Maya stepped into a world that felt less like a party and more like a gladiatorial arena draped in tinsel. The grand ballroom of the Obsidian Tower was a masterpiece of excess. A 20-piece orchestra played a smooth jazz rendition of Silent Night on a raised dais. Waiters in white gloves moved like ghosts through the crowd, carrying silver trays laden with champagne flutes and caviar. The room was filled with the elite of New York's financial district. The men were carbon copies of Liam, sharp jaws, sharper suits, and eyes that scanned the room for opportunities rather than friends. The women were statues of ice and silk, their laughter sounding like tinkling glass. Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks. In her apartment, the red velvet dress had felt cozy and romantic. Here, Surrounded by sleek black satin, silver sequins, and diamonds that cost more than her annual salary, she felt like a flare gun going off in a library. She was too bright, too textured, too real. "Remember," Liam whispered, his lips barely moving as he gripped her elbow. "Invisibility is the goal." He scanned the room, his predator eyes locking onto a group of older men near the bar. "That's the senior board," Liam said, his voice tightening with adrenaline. "And there's Brad. Look at him, laughing with Mr. Henderson. I need to get over there." He turned to Maya, his expression stripping away any pretense of husbandly affection. "Stay here," he commanded. "Do not follow me. You'll just clutter the conversation. Grab a sparkling water, no alcohol, I don't want you flushed, and stand by that pillar. If anyone asks, you're waiting for me. I'll be back in 20 minutes. "Liam, please don't leave me alone," Maya pleaded softly, panic fluttering in her chest. "I don't know anyone." "You're an adult, Maya. Act like one," Liam snapped. He adjusted his cufflinks, put on a blindingly charming smile, and walked away, leaving his wife standing alone next to a potted fern. Maya watched him go. She watched him slide into the circle of powerful men, laughing at a joke he hadn't heard, clapping a man on the back. He looked so comfortable in this shark tank. She realized with a sinking heart that the Liam she loved, the one who read books on the couch with her, was a character he played. This ambitious climber was the real man. The encounter with the wives.
Maya stood by the pillar for 10 minutes, nursing a glass of water, trying to look busy by inspecting the floral arrangements. She felt the weight of eyes on her. "I love your dress. It's so brave." Maya turned. Standing there were 3 women. They were the corporate wives Liam had warned her about. The leader, a tall blonde woman wearing a backless silver gown that looked like liquid mercury, was smiling. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a shark's smile. This was Vanessa, Brad's wife, the competition. "Oh," Maya stammered, caught off guard. "Thank you. I made it myself." The silence that followed was deafening. The 3 women exchanged glances. It wasn't admiration. It was amusement. "You made it?" Vanessa repeated, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "Like with a needle and thread? How quaint! Isn't that adorable, girls? It's like something from Little House on the Prairie." The other women giggled behind their manicured hands. "I think it gives it character," Maya said, trying to defend her work. "It's vintage velvet. I found the fabric in... It's very festive." Vanessa interrupted, stepping closer. She looked Maya up and down, her gaze lingering on the slightly uneven hem. "It must be so nice to have so much free time to do arts and crafts. Brad keeps me so busy with the foundation galas, I barely have time to breathe, let alone sew my own clothes. But I suppose when one is on a budget..." She let the sentence trail off, letting the insult land. Maya felt the sting of tears again. She gripped her water glass tighter. "My husband is working very hard. We're saving for our future." "Of course, honey. And Liam is such a striver. We all see how hungry he is. It's cute. But word of advice, maybe next time leave the homemade projects for the ugly sweater party. This is a black tie gala. You're sticking out like a sore thumb." Vanessa leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Honestly, you're making him look cheap. And in this room, perception is reality." With a final pitying smile, Vanessa turned and led her pack away, leaving Maya trembling with humiliation. She looked down at her dress, the dress she had been so proud of. Now all she saw were the flaws. She saw the poverty. She saw the reason Liam was ashamed of her. The arrival of the king. Suddenly, the jazz music stopped. The roar of conversation died down instantly, replaced by a hush that swept across the room like a cold wind. Heads turned toward the massive double doors at the far end of the ballroom. "He's here," someone whispered near Maya. The doors swung open. Elias Thorne walked in. He didn't make an entrance. He commanded the space simply by existing. Elias was 42, tall, with a build that suggested he boxed to relieve stress. He wore an all-black tuxedo. Black jacket, black shirt, black tie. It was a breach of traditional etiquette, but on him it looked like a statement of absolute authority. He was the darkness in a room full of glitter. His face was striking. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed by stubble, and eyes the color of steel. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't waving. He walked into his own party with the air of a man walking into a funeral he didn't want to attend. He was followed by 2 assistants who looked terrified, but Elias ignored them. He ignored the crowd. He walked straight toward the bar, the guests parting for him like the Red Sea. Maya watched him from her hiding spot behind the pillar. She had expected a monster, a tyrant, as Liam had called him, but she didn't see a tyrant. She saw a man who looked profoundly bored, and perhaps lonely. There was a heaviness in his shoulders that she recognized. It was the weight of wearing a mask. Liam, however, saw something else. He saw his golden ticket.
Maya saw her husband detach himself from the group of men. He smoothed his hair, checked his tie, and began to move toward Elias Thorne with the hunger of a starving wolf. "Oh no," Maya whispered. "Don't do it, Liam." But Liam was driven by ambition. He was going to make his move. He was going to introduce himself to the CEO. But first, he had to deal with the problem. Liam changed course, swerving toward Maya. He grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper into the shadow of the pillar. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. "Did you see him?" Liam hissed. "He's here. I'm going in." "Liam, he looks like he doesn't want to be bothered," Maya warned gently. "Maybe wait." "I don't wait. Winners don't wait," Liam snapped. Then he looked at her dress again, and his face twisted with anxiety. "But I can't have you standing here. Vanessa was looking at you earlier. I saw her laughing. What did she say?" She made fun of the dress," Maya admitted, looking down. "Damn it," Liam cursed under his breath. "I knew it. You're a walking joke, Maya, and if you're a joke, I'm a joke." He looked around frantically. "You need to hide. Seriously. Go to the bathroom, go to the balcony. I don't care. Just get out of sight until I've spoken to Thorne. If he sees me with the woman in the Arts and Crafts project, he'll never take me seriously as a VP." "Hide?" Maya asked, a spark of anger finally igniting in her chest. "I am your wife, Liam, not a dirty secret. Right now, you're a liability." He raised his voice, forgetting to whisper. A few people nearby turned to look. Liam froze. He realized he was causing a scene. He grabbed Maya's wrist, his fingers digging into her skin. "Don't you dare talk back to me here," he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. "You are going to go to the back of the room, you are going to sit in the corner, and you are going to stay there until I collect you. Do not make eye contact with Elias Thorne. Do not breathe in his direction. Go." He shoved her lightly, just enough to make her stumble in her heels. Maya caught her balance, gasping. She looked at Liam, expecting an apology, but he had already turned his back on her. He was fixing his smile, walking toward the bar where Elias Thorne stood alone, nursing a whiskey. Maya stood frozen, her heart shattering in her chest. The music started up again, a cheerful Christmas waltz. Around her, couples were moving to the dance floor, holding each other close. She felt a tear escape, hot and humiliating, tracking down her cheek. She wiped it away furiously. She wouldn't give Liam the satisfaction. She turned to find a dark corner just as he had ordered, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. As Maya turned, blinded by tears, she didn't see the waiter passing behind her with a tray full of red wine. She stepped back. Her elbow hit the tray. Crash! The sound of shattering glass cut through the music like a gunshot. Maya gasped as cold red wine splashed over her arms and onto the floor. But the worst part wasn't the mess. The worst part was the silence that followed. The music stopped again. Every single person in the ballroom turned to look. There stood Maya, the librarian in the homemade dress, standing over a pile of broken glass and spilled wine, right in the center of the room. And standing 10 feet away, frozen mid-step in his approach to the CEO, was Liam. Liam looked at the mess. He looked at the horrified faces of the board members. He looked at Elias Thorne, who had turned slowly from the bar to see what the commotion was. Liam's face turned a color Maya had never seen before. It was a mix of purple rage and white terror. Her career was flashing before his eyes. And in his mind there was only one person to blame. He didn't run to help her. He didn't ask if she was cut. He marched toward her, his footsteps echoing in the silent room. He wasn't coming to save her. He was coming to end her. The silence stretched for 5 seconds, but to Maya it felt like 5 years. She stood paralyzed, her hands hovering uselessly over her mouth. At her feet, a pool of dark Cabernet Sauvignon was spreading across the pristine white marble floor like a fresh wound. Shards of crystal glittered in the liquid. The young waiter, a boy no older than 20, was on his knees, frantically using a napkin to blot the mess, stammering apologies that no one was listening to. "I am so sorry, ma'am. I didn't see you. I tripped. Maya dropped to her knees instinctively to help him. It was her nature. She didn't care about the optics. She saw a terrified kid. No, it was my fault," she whispered, her voice shaking. She reached for a shard of glass. "Don't touch it." The voice cracked like a whip. Liam was there. He towered over her, his shadow falling across her kneeling form. To the rest of the room, he might have looked like a concerned husband rushing to the scene, but Maya could see his eyes. They were black holes of fury. He reached down, grabbed her upper arm with a grip that bruised, and hauled her to her feet with a roughness that made her gasp. He didn't check to see if she was cut. He didn't look at the waiter. He leaned in close, his face inches from hers, his voice a low, venomous hiss that only she, and perhaps the unfortunate waiter, could hear. "What is wrong with you?" Liam spat the words. "I told you to stand still. I gave you one job, one simple instruction. Don't embarrass me. And you decide to wrestle a waiter in the middle of the room?" I stepped back," Maya stammered. Her tears spilling over now, ruining the cheap mascara she had applied so carefully. "It was an accident, Liam." "You are an accident," Liam whispered. The insult landed with the force of a physical blow. Maya flinched physically. Liam released her arm as if he burned him. He looked around the room, putting on a mask of long-suffering patience for the audience. He saw Vanessa and the other wives covering their mouths, giggling. He saw the senior partners shaking their heads. And worst of all, he saw Elias Thorne. The CEO was still standing by the bar, glass in hand. He was watching the scene with an unreadable expression. He hadn't moved. He was just observing, like a scientist watching a rat fail a maze. Liam's ambition turned into panic. He had to distance himself. He had to show the room that he wasn't part of this mess. He had to cut the dead weight. He turned back to Maya, his voice raising slightly, loud enough now for the onlookers to hear. He wanted them to hear. He wanted to perform his dominance. "Look at you," Liam said, gesturing at her with disgust. A few drops of wine had splattered onto the hem of her velvet dress, turning the dark red fabric almost black. "You're a mess. You're hysterical. You clearly couldn't handle the pressure of an event like this." "Liam, please," Maya begged, her voice cracking. "Everyone is staring. Let's just go." "No," he corrected her coldly. "We are not going anywhere. I am staying. I have a career to manage. You are leaving."
He pointed a manicured finger toward the double doors at the far end of the ballroom. The distance seemed impossible. 100 yards of open floor, a gauntlet of judging eyes. "Get out," Liam commanded. "Get your coat, get a taxi, go back to Queens. Take your homemade disaster with you." You're sending me home?" Maya asked, unable to comprehend the cruelty. "Alone? In the snow?" "I don't care where you go, Maya. Just get out of my sight before you cost me my promotion. You've done enough damage for one night." He turned his back on her. He physically turned his back on his crying wife in the middle of a ballroom. He looked at the waiter, snapped his fingers and barked, "Clean this up. It smells cheap." Then Liam adjusted his suit jacket, took a breath, and began to walk toward the bar, toward Elias Thorne, leaving Maya standing alone in the wreckage. Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. The whispers of the crowd grew louder, like the buzzing of hornets. "Did you hear him? He kicked her out. Well, look at the dress. I'd kick her out too. Poor Liam, saddled with that." Maya wrapped her arms around her stomach. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that she had worked 2 jobs to support Liam while he finished his MBA. She wanted to tell them that she was the one who proofread his resumes, who ironed his shirts, who held him when he cried from stress. But she couldn't. She had no voice here. She was just the clumsy wife. She lowered her head, letting her hair fall forward to hide her face. She turned toward the doors.
The walk was agonizing. Her heels clicked on the marble, clack, 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 a lonely metronome counting down the seconds of her humiliation. Every step was a struggle. Her legs felt heavy. The red velvet dress, which she had sewn with so much love, now felt like a heavy shroud. She passed Vanessa. The blonde woman didn't even pretend to hide her smirk. She raised her champagne glass in a mock toast as Maya passed. Maya kept her eyes on the exit sign. "Just get to the door," she told herself. "Just get to the door, get your coat, and never look back. It's over. The marriage is over." She was 10 feet from the heavy gold doors. She reached out a trembling hand to push the bar. "Stop." The word wasn't shouted. It was spoken in a deep baritone voice that carried a strange, resonant quality. It cut through the murmurs of the crowd like a knife through silk. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Maya froze. Her hand hovered inches from the door. She thought, for a wild second, that Liam had changed his mind, that he had come to his senses. She turned around slowly, hope warring with fear. But it wasn't Liam. Liam was standing halfway to the bar, frozen in his tracks, looking confused. The man who had spoken was Elias Thorne. The CEO had moved. He had left the sanctuary of the bar and walked into the center of the room. He stood directly between Liam and Maya, creating a physical barrier. The room went deathly silent. The orchestra stopped playing mid-measure. Even the waiters stopped moving. Elias Thorne didn't look at Liam. He didn't look at the board members. His steel-gray eyes were locked intently on Maya. He looked at her tear-streaked face. He looked at the wine stain on the floor. He looked at the trembling of her hands. Then, slowly, deliberately, he turned his head to look at Liam. The temperature in the room seemed to drop to absolute zero. Elias's face was a mask of cold fury. It was terrifying. It was the face of a man who could destroy a company with a phone call. "Mr. Sterling," Elias said. His voice was calm, conversational even, which made it infinitely more menacing. "Is there a problem with the ventilation in here?" Liam blinked, completely thrown off balance. "Sir? No, I don't think so, Mr. Thorne. I was just handling a minor, domestic situation. My apologies for the disturbance. My wife was just leaving." "I see," Elias said. He took a step toward Liam. Liam instinctively took a step back. "You're sending her away because of a spilled glass of wine." "Well, it's not just the wine, sir," Liam chuckled nervously, trying to find an ally in the other man. "It's the whole package. She's She's not really cut out for this environment. I'm sure you understand. Presentation is key, as you always say. Presentation, Elias repeated the word, tasting it. He looked back at Maya. He looked at the red velvet dress. To Vanessa, it looked cheap, but Elias Vaughan had an eye for detail. He saw the hand stitching. He saw the way the fabric had been carefully gathered. He saw the effort. "Tell me, Mr. Sterling," Elias asked, his voice ringing out in the silent hall, "who tied your tie tonight?" "Excuse me?" "Your tie," Elias pointed to the perfect Windsor knot at his throat. "It's a complex knot, symmetrical. Who tied it?" My wife did, sir," Liam admitted, glancing at Maya. "She's good with details." "And who ironed that shirt?" Elias pressed, taking another step forward. "She did," Liam whispered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "And I assume," Elias continued, relentless, "that while you were working late nights to earn this promotion, someone was keeping your home, paying your bills, and ensuring you had a warm bed to return to." Liam didn't answer. He couldn't. Elias turned away from Liam as if he were bored with him. He dismissed him completely. He turned his full attention to Maya. He walked toward her. The crowd gasped. The Ice King, the man who famously hated social interactions, was walking toward the crying woman in the homemade dress. Maya watched him approach. She wanted to run. She was terrified he was going to scold her too, or perhaps have security drag her out to save the floor. She shrank back against the door. Elias stopped 2 feet in front of her. Up close, he smelled of sandalwood and expensive scotch. He was taller than Liam, broader. He looked down at her, and the ice in his eyes melted. For the first time all night, his expression softened into something that looked dangerously like kindness. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. It was white silk, monogrammed with silver thread. He didn't hand it to her. He reached out and, with shocking gentleness, dabbed a tear from her cheek. The entire room stopped breathing. "The ventilation is fine," Elias said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But the atmosphere in here is toxic. It lacks authenticity." He looked at her dress again. "Velvet," Elias observed quietly. "Hand-stitched?" Maya nodded, unable to speak. "My mother was a seamstress," Elias said, a small, sad smile touching his lips. "She taught me that the most valuable things aren't the ones you buy. They are the ones you make with your own hands, because you sew your soul into them." He looked over her shoulder at Liam, his eyes hardening again. "A man who cannot appreciate the labor of love is a man who understands the price of everything and the value of nothing. Such a man has no place in my boardroom." Liam went pale. The threat was explicit. Elias turned back to Maya. He extended his hand. It was a large, steady hand, a hand that offered safety. "The music has stopped," Elias said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He looked at the orchestra conductor and nodded once. The conductor, scrambling to obey, tapped his baton. The orchestra began to play. Not a waltz this time. Something slower, deeper, something romantic. Elias looked into Maya's eyes. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, his voice deep and warm, "your husband has asked you to leave, but this is my party. And in my house, the Queen does not leave through the back door." He bowed slightly at the waist, a gesture of old-world respect. "May I have this dance?" Maya stared at the hand extended toward her. It wasn't just a hand. It was a lifeline thrown into a raging sea. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct she had, honed by years of Liam's criticism, told her to run. "You're clumsy. You'll step on his feet. You'll ruin this too." But then she looked up at Elias Thorne's face. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He was looking at her with patience. He was waiting, as if he had all the time in the world, as if the hundreds of people staring at them didn't exist. Maya took a shaky breath. She looked down at the mess at her feet, the shards of crystal and the puddle of dark wine that threatened to stain her hem further. It's a mess," she whispered, looking at the floor. "Then let's leave the mess behind," Elias said. He didn't pull her into the debris. Instead, he took her hand and guided her 3 steps backward, pulling her smoothly away from the hazard and onto the pristine, polished center of the marble floor. He signaled a waiter with a sharp nod to clean the spill, dismissing the chaos entirely. Now, standing in the clear open space under the chandelier, he turned to face her. The crowd parted. The sea of black tuxedos and silver gowns split wide open to create a path for them. Maya walked beside him, her head still swimming. She could feel the eyes of the guests on her skin. She saw Vanessa's jaw drop. She saw Liam, pale and frozen, looking like a ghost haunting his own life. Elias stopped directly under the massive crystal chandelier. The light caught the deep red of her velvet dress, making it glow like a ruby in a room full of diamonds. He turned to face her. He placed one hand on the small of her back, respectful yet possessive enough to signal to everyone in the room that she was with him. He took her other hand and raised it. I'm not a very good dancer," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the swelling strings of the orchestra. "I might step on you." Elias looked down at her, his steel-gray eyes crinkling at the corners. "Then I will move my feet," he replied simply. "Just breathe, Maya. Follow me." He stepped forward. Maya stepped back. It wasn't a stumble. It was a glide.
Elias moved with a deceptive grace for a man of his size. He was a strong lead, the kind that made following effortless. He didn't just move his body, he guided hers, telegraphing every turn and dip with subtle pressure from his hand. Maya found her feet moving instinctively, the muscle memory of old lessons kicking in. They spun. The world blurred. The judging faces of the board members, the sneering wives, the terrified husband, they all smeared into streaks of meaningless color. The only thing in focus was Elias. The smell of his sandalwood cologne filled her senses. The heat of his hand on her back burned through the velvet. "You made this dress?" Elias asked again, as they swayed to the rhythm of the cello. He wasn't making small talk. He sounded genuinely curious. "Yes," Maya nodded, daring to meet his gaze. "I couldn't afford a new one. Liam said it looked like a theater curtain." Elias scoffed, a low sound of derision in his throat. "Liam has the aesthetic taste of a spreadsheet. Look around you, Maya." He spun her out, a slow, controlled twirl that sent the full skirt of her dress flaring out in a perfect crimson circle. For a moment, she was flying. He caught her hand and pulled her back into his chest with a gentle thud. "You made this dress?" Elias asked again, as they swayed to the rhythm of the cello. He wasn't making small talk. He sounded genuinely curious. "Yes," Maya nodded, daring to meet his gaze. "I couldn't afford a new one. Liam said it looked like a theater curtain." Elias scoffed, a low sound of derision in his throat. "Liam has the aesthetic taste of a spreadsheet. Look around you, Maya. Everyone else in this room is wearing what a stylist told them to wear. They're wearing uniforms. You are wearing art. Do you know how rare that is in my world to see something real?" "I feel out of place," Maya admitted, the honesty spilling out. "I'm just a librarian from Queens. I don't belong here." Elias stopped moving for a microsecond, just enough to look her deep in the eyes. "A librarian?" "Yes." A slow smile spread across Elias's face. It transformed him. The Ice King melted away, revealing a man who looked almost delighted.
My first job was shelving books at the New York Public Library. I was 16. I spent more time reading in the stacks than working. The Count of Monte Cristo. That was my favorite. Maya's eyes widened. That's my favorite too. The ultimate story of patience. And justice, Elias added, his voice dropping an octave. Don't forget the justice. He steered her effortlessly through a complex turn. You belong here more than anyone, Maya, because you have a mind, and you have a backbone. Most people in this room would have crumbled if their spouse treated them like that. You stood tall. I didn't feel tall, Maya whispered. I felt small. Courage isn't about how you feel, Elias said firmly. It's about what you do. And tonight, you are dancing with the host while your husband watches from the sidelines. That looks pretty tall to me. Maya risked a glance over Elias's shoulder. She saw Liam. He hadn't moved. He was standing exactly where she had left him, but now he was alone. The circle of senior partners had dissolved. No one wanted to be seen standing next to the man who had insulted the CEO's dance partner. Liam looked small. He looked diminished. For the first time all night, Maya didn't feel fear when she looked at him. She felt pity. The music swelled to a crescendo. Elias led her into a final dramatic dip. He held her there, suspended above the floor, her hair cascading down, her heart racing. The room erupted in applause. It wasn't the polite golf clap applause of a corporate event. It was genuine. People love a show, and Elias Thorne had just given them the performance of the year. He pulled her upright. He didn't let go of his hand. "Thank you," Maya breathed, flushed and breathless. "Don't thank me yet," Elias said, his expression hardening slightly as he looked toward the bar. "The dance was for you. The next part is for me." Elias kept Maya's hand tucked in the crook of his arm. He turned to face the room. The music died down. The chatter stopped. Everyone waited to see what the king would do next. Elias walked. He didn't walk toward the exit. He walked straight toward Liam Sterling. The crowd parted again, but this time the atmosphere was different. It wasn't awe. It was anticipation. They smelled blood. Liam saw them coming. He tried to compose himself. He straightened his tie, the tie Maya had tied for him. He tried to conjure a smile, but it looked like a grimace. "Mr. Thorne," Liam said as they approached, his voice cracking slightly. "Sir, I hope my wife didn't step on your toes. She's not used to—" "Stop," Elias said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The single word hit Liam like a slap. Elias stood before him with Maya at his side. The visual contrast was brutal. Elias looked like a protector. Liam looked like a bully. "Mr. Sterling," Elias began, his voice projecting clearly to the silent room, "I have been reviewing the candidates for the Vice President of Operations position all week. It is a role that requires judgment. It requires the ability to identify value where others see nothing. It requires loyalty." Liam nodded frantically, hope flickering in his eyes. "Yes, sir, absolutely. Loyalty is my core value." "Is it?" Elias asked, tilting his head. "Because I just watched you attempt to discard your most valuable asset in the middle of a crowded room because you were worried about, what, my opinion?" "I was trying to maintain professional standards, sir. I thought—" "You thought wrong," Elias cut him off. "You looked at a woman who supports you, who creates for you, who stands by you, and you saw a liability. I looked at the same woman, and I saw grace. I saw resilience." Elias took a step closer to Liam. "If you are this blind in your personal life, Mr. Sterling, how can I trust you with my company's assets? If you cannot see the value in your own wife, how will you see value in a distressed market?" Liam opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was drowning. "The vice president position is filled," Elias announced, his voice ringing out. He looked briefly at Brad, who was standing nearby. "Brad, report to my office on Monday. You have the job." A gasp went through the room. Liam's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. "But, sir," Liam whispered, his face gray, "I've worked. I've done everything." "You did the work," Elias agreed. "But you failed the character test, and at Sterling and Hearth, character is currency." Elias turned his back on Liam. It was the ultimate dismissal. He looked down at Maya, his expression softening instantly. "Maya," he said gently, "I believe you were asked to leave." "Yes," Maya nodded, tears standing in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of vindication. "Well, I find myself in need some fresh air, and I would hate for a lady to wait for a taxi alone in the snow. May I offer you a ride home?" Maya looked at Liam. He was staring at the floor, defeated, broken by his own vanity. He didn't look up. He didn't fight for her. She looked back at Elias, the man who had read The Count of Monte Cristo, the man who saw her. "I would like that very much," Maya said. Elias offered his arm. "Shall we?" They walked out together. They walked past the stunned board members. They walked past a gaping Vanessa. They walked out of the ballroom and into the golden elevator, leaving Liam Sterling alone in the ruins of his ambition. The interior of Elias's limousine was quiet and warm. It smelled of leather. Maya sat on one side, clutching her wool coat, which Elias had personally retrieved from the coat check, terrifying the attendant. Elias sat opposite her. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy with unspoken things. "You ruined his life," Maya said softly, looking out the window at the passing city lights. "He ruined his own life," Elias corrected. "I just hastened the inevitable. A man who treats people like disposable objects eventually gets discarded himself. It's the law of the universe." He poured 2 glasses of sparkling water from a crystal decanter and handed one to her. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," Maya admitted. She took a sip of water. "I feel light, like a weight I've been carrying for years just fell off. But I also feel terrified. I have nowhere to go. That was our apartment, our life." "You have somewhere to go tonight? I have a guest suite at my townhouse. It's secure, it's warm, and it has a library." Maya looked at him surprised. "A library?" 3,000 volumes, Elias smiled. A genuine, boyish smile. "First editions, classics. It's, my sanctuary. I'd be honored if you'd critique my cataloging system." Maya felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "You're offering a stranger a room?" "You're not a stranger, Maya," Elias said, his voice turning serious. "I've been watching you for a long time." Maya froze. "What?" Elias looked down at his glass, swirling the water. He looked, for the first time, unsure of himself. "I visit the library in Queens," he admitted quietly, "the branch on 42nd Street. I go there on Saturdays, wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie, so no one recognizes me. It's the only place I can think." He looked up at her. "I've seen you there. I've seen how you helped the kids with their homework. I've seen how you helped that elderly man find the tax forms he needed, even though it took you an hour. I've seen your patience. I've seen your light." Maya stared at him, stunned. "The man in the gray hoodie? The one who reads in the back corner?" "That's me," Elias nodded. "I didn't know you were Liam Sterling's wife until tonight. When I saw you walk in, and when I saw how he treated you, it broke something in me. I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't let him extinguish a light I've been admiring from the shadows for a year."
Maya felt her heart skip a beat. It wasn't just a rescue, it was fate. "You knew who I was?" she whispered. "I knew who you were. I just didn't have the courage to say hello. Until tonight." The car slowed to a stop in front of a magnificent townhouse on the Upper East Side. Elias leaned forward. "You don't have to go back to him, Maya. You don't have to go back to being small. You can start over. And I would very much like to be the one to help you turn the page." Maya looked at the man offering her a new chapter. She thought of Liam's cruelty. She thought of the red dress. She thought of the library. She smiled. It was a brave, beautiful smile. "I'd like to see that library." The heavy oak doors creaked open, revealing a room that stole the breath from Maya's lungs. Elias hadn't lied. It was a cathedral of knowledge. 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves wrapped around the room, filled with thousands of books. A rolling ladder rested against one wall. In the center, a large stone fireplace crackled with a roaring fire, casting dancing shadows across 2 plush leather armchairs and a vintage Persian rug. It smelled of cedar, old paper, and safety. "Oh," Maya exhaled, stepping inside. She reached out to touch the spine of a leather-bound volume on the nearest shelf. "Dickens, first edition?" 1843, Elias confirmed, closing the doors behind them to shut out the world. "I have a weakness for Christmas stories. The idea that a man can change overnight, that redemption is possible. It appeals to me." He walked over to the fireplace and added a log. The sparks flew up the chimney. Maya watched him. In the tuxedo, he looked like a prince from a fairy tale, but in his movements, careful, deliberate, he was just the quiet man from the library. "You can stay here as long as you need," Elias said, turning to face her. "The guest suite is through that door. It has its own bathroom, a lock on the inside, and I've had my housekeeper leave some fresh clothes. They might be a bit big. They're my sister's. She stays here when she visits from London, but they're warm." "You have a sister?" Maya asked, realizing how little she knew about him. "I do. She's the one who taught me that a house is just bricks until you fill it with people you trust." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card. He placed it on the mantelpiece. "This is the number for my personal attorney, Marcus Cole. He is the best divorce lawyer in the state. If you decide to go down that path, his services are already paid for." Maya looked at the card. The reality of her situation crashed back in. Liam, the apartment, the marriage. "He's going to be so angry," Maya whispered, a tremor of old fear returning. "He loses his temper when he loses control. He might come looking for me." Elias walked over to her. He didn't touch her this time, respecting her space, but his presence was a shield. "He won't come near you, Maya. My security team is parked outside. And Liam Sterling is a bully. Bullies don't attack when they know there's a bigger wolf guarding the door." Elias looked at the clock. It was past midnight. "I will be in the room down the hall. If you need anything, water, a book, someone to talk to, my door is open. But I suspect you need to sleep. You've had a long war." "Thank you, Elias, for everything. Good night, Maya."
He left her in the library. Maya stood there for a long time, listening to the crackle of the fire. She picked up the business card. Marcus Cole, attorney at law. It felt heavy in her hand. It felt like a weapon. For the first time in her marriage, she wasn't defenseless. The next morning, Maya woke up in a bed that felt like a cloud. Sunlight was streaming through the heavy velvet curtains. For a split second, she forgot. She reached out, expecting to feel the cold, empty space beside her where Liam usually slept, or didn't sleep, as he was always up early for the gym.
Then she saw the unfamiliar room, the silk wallpaper, the vase of fresh white roses on the nightstand. She sat up with a gasp. The events of the gala rushed back. The wine, the humiliation, the dance, the library. She grabbed her phone from the bedside table. It was dead. She plugged it in with the charger she found on the dresser. As soon as the screen lit up, it buzzed violently. 53 missed calls. Liam. 28 text messages. Liam. She opened the messages, her stomach churning. 11:30 p.m. Where the hell are you? 11:45 p.m. Get back here. We need to talk damage control. 12:15 a.m. You left with him? Are you insane? 1 a.m. Maya, pick up. I'm sorry. I was stressed. Please. 3 a.m. I love you. Don't do this. 7 a.m. You're ruining my life. Call me. The progression from anger to bargaining to victimhood was classic Liam. Maya stared at the screen. A day ago, these messages would have sent her into a panic attack. She would have apologized. She would have rushed home to fix him. But this morning, surrounded by the quiet safety Elias had provided, she felt different. She remembered Elias's words, "You have a backbone." There was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," Maya called out. The door opened, and a kind-faced older woman entered carrying a tray. This was Martha, the housekeeper. "Good morning, dear," Martha smiled. "Mr. Thorne has gone to the office. He said he had some house cleaning to do at the firm, but he asked me to bring you breakfast. Pancakes. He said you look like a pancake person." Maya smiled despite herself. "I love pancakes." "And," Martha added, placing the tray on the bed, "there is a gentleman downstairs, a Mr. Sterling. He is at the gate. Security has not let him in, obviously, but he is shouting." Maya grew cold. "He was here. He tracked my phone," she whispered. "We shared a location app for safety." "Mr. Thorne left strict instructions," Martha said calmly, pouring coffee. "You do not have to see him. Security will remove him if you say the word." Maya looked at the coffee. She looked at the divorce lawyer's cards still on the nightstand. She thought about the red dress. "No," Maya said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "I need to see him. I need to end it. Otherwise he'll haunt me." "Are you sure, dear?" "Yes, but not inside the house. Tell him to wait on the street. I'll come out." It was a crisp, cold December morning. Snow covered the sidewalk. Maya walked out of the heavy iron gates of the townhouse, wrapped in cashmere coat that belonged to Elias's sister. Liam was pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, looking disheveled. He was still wearing his tuxedo trousers from the night before, paired with a wrinkled coat. His hair was messy. He looked like a man who had lost everything. When he saw Maya, he stopped. He looked relieved, then angry, then desperate. "Maya!" He rushed toward the gate, but a large man in a black suit, Elias's security, stepped forward, blocking him. Liam stopped, glaring at the guard. "Maya, thank God," Liam called out over the guard's shoulder. "Come on, get in the car. We're going home. We need to figure out how to spin this. If we issue a joint statement saying you were ill, maybe Thorne will reconsider the VP spot." Maya stood on the other side of the gate bars. She looked at him. She didn't see the man she loved anymore. She saw a stranger who was trying to use her as a human shield. "There is no we, Liam," Maya said calmly. The cold air felt good in her lungs. "And I'm not going home." "What?" Liam laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Don't be dramatic. Look, I know I was harsh last night. I had a few drinks. I was under pressure. You know how much that promotion meant to me. I snapped. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. You weren't harsh, Maya corrected him. You were cruel. You looked at me with hatred, Liam. You told me I was an accident. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. That was the only time you were honest. You've been ashamed of me for years. You hated my clothes, my job, my personality. You wanted a trophy wife and you got a librarian. I tried to change for you. I tried to make myself smaller so you would feel big. But I'm done shrinking. You can't leave me. Liam sneered, his tone shifting to aggression. You have nowhere to go. You can't afford the apartment. You have nothing without me. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the business card. She passed it through the bars of the gate. Liam took it, confused. He read the name. Marcus Cole. His face went pale. You got a lawyer? How? You can't afford Marcus Cole. He charges $1,000 an hour. Elias Thorne is paying for it, Maya said. Liam stared at her. You're sleeping with him? Is that it? You slut. You planned this. I'm not sleeping with him, Maya said, her head high. He's just a decent man, which is something you'll never understand. I want a divorce, Liam. I want my name back, and I want you to never contact me again. Maya, please. Liam's voice broke, tears forming in his eyes. Real tears this time. He realized it was actually over. I can't lose the job and you in the same weekend. Please. You didn't lose me this weekend, Liam, Maya said softly, turning away. You lost me the first time you told me not to be myself. She signaled to the guard. I'm done. The guard stepped back into position. Maya turned and walked back toward the warm glow of the townhouse. She heard Liam shouting her name, but his voice sounded faint, like a ghost fading away. She walked through the front door and closed it. Silence. Peace. Christmas Eve, 2 weeks later. The townhouse had transformed. Over the last 2 weeks, Maya had slowly stopped being a guest and started being present. She had organized the library. Elias was thrilled. She had cooked dinner 3 times. Elias was gaining weight and looked less like a skeleton. It was Christmas Eve. A snowstorm was raging outside, painting the window panes white. Inside, the fire was roaring. Maya was in the living room, sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of ornaments. Elias had insisted on getting a real tree, a massive 10-foot Douglas fir that smelled of the forest. I haven't decorated a tree in 10 years, Elias admitted, handing her a silver star. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and jeans, no suit. He looked younger, softer. Why not? Maya asked, stringing popcorn, her idea, which Elias found fascinatingly rustic. Work, Elias shrugged, sitting on the rug beside her. Christmas is usually just a day off for the market. I spend it reviewing year-end reports, alone. Well, not this year, Maya smiled. She handed him a fragile glass ornament, a small red bird. Here, you put this one up. It needs a high branch. Elias stood up and placed the bird near the top. He stepped back to admire the tree. It was a chaotic mix of his expensive heirloom ornaments and the paper snowflakes Maya had made. It was perfect. Maya, Elias said, turning to her, I have something for you. Elias, no, Maya protested, standing up. You've done too much. The lawyer, the house. This isn't charity, Elias said softly. This is selfish, because I want to see you use it. He walked over to a large box wrapped in green paper that was sitting on the armchair. He handed it to her. Maya sat on the sofa and carefully peeled back the paper. Inside was a sleek, heavy wooden case. She opened the latches. She gasped. It was a sewing machine. But not just any machine. It was a top-of-the-line, professional-grade Bernina, and next to it, a stack of sketchbooks and a set of high-quality fabric shears engraved with her initials, M.L. Maya Lin, her maiden name. Elias! Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. This is too much. I saw how you looked at that velvet dress. I saw the care you put into it. You have a gift, Maya. You shouldn't be hiding it. I want you to design. For yourself. Maybe even start a line. I know a few investors. He winked playfully. I don't know what to say, Maya whispered, running her hand over the cool metal of the machine. Say you'll stay, Elias said. The playfulness vanished. His voice was raw, honest. Say you'll stay for Christmas. And maybe after. Maya looked up from the machine. She looked at the man who had given her back her dignity, her voice, and now her dream. I'm not going anywhere, Maya promised. She reached out and took his hand. It was the same hand that had saved her on the dance floor, but this time, she didn't need saving. She just wanted holding. Elias smiled, a smile that reached his eyes and stayed there. Merry Christmas, Maya. Merry Christmas, Elias. Outside, the snow fell, covering the tracks of the past. Inside, a new future was being stitched together, one careful thread at a time. 1 year later, the snow was falling again in Manhattan, coating the city in a hush of white. It was the night of the Sterling and Hearth annual Christmas gala. The obsidian tower stood tall against the skyline, its windows glowing with warmth. Down on the street, the line of black limousines was just as long as it had been the year before. The paparazzi were gathered behind velvet ropes, cameras flashing as the city's elite stepped onto the red carpet. But this year, the buzz was different. People weren't just talking about the stock market or the mergers. They were talking about the decor. They were talking about the dresses. Have you seen the host? A photographer shouted. Is she here yet? A sleek silver Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb. The door opened. Maya stepped out. She was unrecognizable from the timid, trembling woman who had stood there 12 months ago. She stood tall, her posture radiating a quiet, unshakable confidence, and she was wearing a masterpiece. It was a gown of deep emerald silk, structured with an architectural precision that defied gravity, yet flowing like water when she moved. It was encrusted with subtle, dark crystals that caught the light like stars in a forest canopy. It was bold. It was regal. And of course, she had made it herself. But she wasn't just wearing the dress. She was the label. M.L. Couture had become the breakout fashion house of the year, funded by an anonymous angel investor, who wasn't so anonymous to those who knew Elias, and fueled by Maya's genius. The flashbulbs erupted. Maya, look this way. Miss Lin, is it true you designed the First Lady's holiday gown? Maya smiled, a practiced, gracious smile, and waved. She didn't look at her feet. She looked straight ahead. A hand extended from the car to join hers. Elias Thorne stepped out. He looked as formidable as ever in his black tuxedo, but the hardness around his eyes was gone. He looked at Maya not as a possession, but as a partner. Ready to go back into the lion's den? Elias asked, offering his arm. It's not a lion's den anymore, Elias, Maya replied, taking his arm. It's just a room, and I redesigned the drapes. Elias laughed, a sound that the press had captured more times in the last year than in the previous decade combined. That you did. Shall we? They walked into the lobby. The revolving doors spun, the past and the present collided. The ballroom
was breathtaking. Maya had been commissioned to style the event. Gone were the stuffy, traditional decorations. The room was transformed into a winter garden with hanging wisteria made of white silk and ice sculptures that refracted the light in rainbows. As Maya and Elias entered, the room didn't just hush, it turned to admire. Maya moved through the crowd, shaking hands. She wasn't hiding behind a pillar this time. She was the center of gravity. "Maya, darling!" Vanessa, the shark-like wife from the previous year, rushed over. She looked desperate for attention. "I must say the venue looks divine, and I am dying to get a consultation for my spring wardrobe. I always said you had such a unique eye." Maya looked at Vanessa. She remembered the ridicule. She remembered the "little house on the prairie" comment. "Hello, Vanessa," Maya said politely, but with a cool distance. "My booking manager handles the schedule. I believe there is a 6-month wait list, but do send an email." She didn't stop to chat. She kept moving. She didn't need their validation anymore. Elias leaned in. 6 months? Last I checked, your calendar had openings in March. "Tax for being mean," Maya whispered back, winking. Elias chuckled. "Remind me never to cross you." They reached the bar, the same spot where Liam had abandoned her. Maya paused. The memory flickered for a second, the spilled wine, the shouting, the shame. But it didn't hurt anymore. It felt like watching a movie about someone else. They moved through the lobby toward the elevators, basking in the glow of the flashbulbs, but just before they reached the security checkpoint, a commotion near the revolving doors caught Maya's eye. "Please, I just want to say hello. I know the host." Maya stopped. She knew that voice. She turned toward the glass doors. Outside, standing in the freezing snow, pressing against the velvet ropes that separated the elite from the public, was Liam. He looked diminished. His coat was thin, his hair windblown. He was holding a resume in one hand, trying to push it toward the security guard who was firmly blocking his path. He wasn't a guest. He was a spectator. Liam looked up and saw them through the glass. His eyes locked onto Maya in her emerald gown. He froze. He lowered the resume. The hunger and regret on his face were visible even through the double-paned glass. He opened his mouth to shout her name, to beg, but the security guard stepped in front of him, pointing down the street. Elias stiffened, ready to intervene, but Maya placed a hand on his arm. "Do you want me to have him removed?" Elias asked quietly. Maya looked at the man who had once told her she belonged in the shadows. Now, he was the one left in the cold. "No," Maya said, turning her back on the glass. "He's exactly where he belongs. Outside." She tightened her grip on Elias's arm. "Let's go upstairs. The party is waiting." The orchestra began to play. It was the same song as last year, the waltz. Elias led Maya to the center of the floor. The crowd parted, just like before. But this time it wasn't a rescue mission. It was a victory lap. They moved together in perfect harmony. "You handled him well," Elias murmured, spinning her. "I learned from the best," Maya smiled.
Elias slowed the pace. He pulled her closer. The room seemed to fade away. "Maya," he said, his voice serious, "this last year has been the happiest of my life. You filled the library. You filled the silence. You filled me." He stopped dancing. He let go of her waist and took both her hands. "I have a question," Elias said. Maya's breath hitched. "Elias?" Elias didn't kneel. He didn't need grand gestures. Their love was built on quiet truths. He looked her in the eye, standing equal to her,
Last year, I asked you for a dance, Elias said. Tonight, I want to ask you for a lifetime. I don't want to just be the man who catches you when you fall. I want to be the man who flies with you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it. Inside was a ring, not a generic diamond, but a rare, vintage emerald, set in gold filigree. It looked like something from a storybook. It looked like something built to last. Maya Lin, Elias whispered, will you marry me? Maya looked at the ring. She looked at the man. She thought of the journey, from the cracked mirror in Queens to the center of the world. Yes, she whispered, tears spilling over. Yes, Elias, 1,000 times. Elias slipped the ring onto her finger. He pulled her into a kiss that stopped the room. The applause that erupted was deafening, but neither of them heard it. They were too busy starting their forever. Sometimes the worst day of your life is just the prologue to the best days. If you believe in second chances and know your own worth, hit that like button and subscribe. And remember, never let anyone treat you like a draft when you are a masterpiece. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.